Is re-recording?
Re-recording? Re-recording. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the MikeDrop podcast. You have both of the mics in the same room. There is no Zoom between us. Not a single.
There never was.
So we're here in the dungeon of practice here at the Truesdale Abode in Ithaca, New York. And we have had an amazing time talking about various things, both on and off the record. And this, as I didn't say before, is episode 22, where we're talking about musical taste. What a tricky little thing.
Yeah, it's something I don't know if I would go on the record about previously, but we've been recording some music and then we've been attending some concerts together, and it's sort of been front of mind in our conversations.
Yep.
And also we just went to the Ithaca Book Sale, which is an incredible
great
event. And at the Ithaca Book Sale, I purchased some musicological tomes. It got us talking about musical taste.
Yeah,
a little bit.
And I've been thinking about it a lot with my teaching, because I want to guide somebody through developing their own musical taste, and I try to kind of inspire with my personal musical taste, but not overwhelm. And I know it's a very fine line. So maybe we can start. How would you define musical taste? How would you define it?
Yeah. I think I would have two answers. One is musical taste that maybe they're the same taste.
Okay.
But one is, what I like to consume. What I would prefer, taste as a preference.
Sure.
And then there's the other kind of taste, which is an obligation, which is when you are doing something that maybe you didn't pick as a performer. Yep. There's the taste in sort of how are you going to execute this?
Yeah.
But I think maybe more often than not with percussion, we're talking about the first one, because the first one makes the second one sort of happen.
Sure.
What do you think? What is taste?
I think.
Should we have talked about this before we started recording?
Okay.
What's your favorite sense? Touch? Is it
intuition?
Touch? Let's talk about touch. Yeah. Heart?
Fire. Wind. Water. Go taste. Because for me, I think there's taste that you have and there's taste you develop.
Yes. Okay.
And then maybe as slightly different subsects, I think about taste of I'm going to put I like this piece a lot, and then there's we're past the piece stage, and it's just how does someone interpret a piece, right? Like I think there's two very different things, which is the quality of a composition and the quality of a performance, and sometimes they're both great, but not all the time, right?
And we also get into the zone where there's an intermediary step, which is curation.
Yep.
So very often for percussion, we're sort of judged by what we play as much as how we play it.
Oh, yeah.
And so sometimes taste comes across as, well, what piece did this person, when they had the opportunity to pick, what did they pick?
Yeah, right.
To do? And so would you agree that that's part of the
totally
taste spectrum?
Yeah, because you go to a recital and you could have a recital of all pieces that I would never play myself. Yeah. But they could be masterfully performed.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that for me, there's two different kinds of tastes in that way.
Okay.
And I think they're different.
Yeah. So when someone says something's tastefully done,
yeah,
what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think that it's so personal, right? Because if we go to see a concert, I could think of a specific moment, right? We just saw a concert. I can like remember this moment that I felt like, gosh, that was so amazing.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like how this violin player played with just this decreasing lightness to give a lift to the end of a phrase. And I thought, dang, that is so tasteful.
Yes. Extremely filled with taste. Yeah.
Contasto.
Yeah. Yeah. So the big question is, can you develop it?
I think yes.
If we agree that it's something that can be had and it's a good thing,
yeah.
Can you develop it? So you say yes.
I think so. And then, I mean, even maybe before that, how do you think it's formed in the first place? Do you think it's nature nurture stuff?
I think so.
What you're around as a kid.
I think so. And it's also just like I think we've talked about on previous episodes, it's sort of the role of your teacher is to sort of provide a model for how to do something, a demonstration of how to do something, and an idea about, what this could be like. So I think that's sort of where taste comes from, in addition to the, your own kind of dictionary or journal of experiences. I don't know. Do you
I think so too. Yeah. I mean, there's so many people who are formed by what their parents expose them to as kids. So what you grow up around. Like a lot of people grow up around maybe rock and roll or something, and maybe now kids are growing up around, let's say, Beyonce or something, right? And if that's what's on the radio, and maybe through a different intermediary, but like what kind of books are in the house, right? What kind of TV shows are on the TV? What happens at dinner? What are we doing? Is music around? Are we talking about it? Do you have a musical family in some ways? And it's not like I'm trying to create a recipe for success, because that's not the point, but it definitely defines what you're interested in, because I think taste could be developed with by a variety of methods. Like you could have taste developed through like a great experience, right? I went to go see James Taylor as a kid, and that amazing experience now cements James Taylor in my memory. Or it's nostalgic, right? Like, I remember when I went to Grandpa's house and Grandpa had this on the radio, or we went to this concert and I heard this piece, or whatever it is. So I think there's a little bit of taste that's involved in just the sheer upbringing before we really think about being musicians necessarily, but your musical taste is structured by that. But then there's also, like, once you get into a private lesson mode, what's the piece that your teacher puts in front of you? And then by me putting a piece in front of a student, does that automatically give my endorsement of that piece? And some people say yes, and some people say no. And then how your teacher deals with that is very, very different. Like, I've been saying that the teacher's role to do that, or we never were grown up with somebody saying, that's a bad piece, that's a good piece. I mean, most people don't get that, but I think if you do get that, it helps form the taste.
So, not to get too serious, but
all right,
what makes something, we're in the percussion realm, what makes something good or bad?
Yeah, I think now we're starting to talk about real stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm curious. I'm
that's
curious
what
your
taste
thought.
is.
Like, there's no better way to talk about taste than to just be personal, because well, there's a vibe that you should never have an opinion about taste, and then there's an energy that, like, actually you having a strong opinion about taste helps others define their taste.
Sure. You mean me as a teacher?
Yes, as a teacher.
But there's something I want to get to that question, because I think that's a question that we dance around too much. But for me as a professional, like I lived in New York for a few years. I was part of a gigging culture. You in some ways are kind of everybody has taste, I hope, and prefers something over something else. But when you're in a gigging culture, you can't really let that influence what you do necessarily. Especially when you're just starting out, it's kind of you take what you get gigging culture if you want to stay in it. If you don't, then you can just start saying no, and then eventually you won't have gigs. You'll do something else. But for me as a gigging musician, there was a lot of times that a piece that came up for me to play, I wasn't really excited about playing, or I didn't really see what was going on in the piece. I couldn't really connect with it musically. But your job is to make this the best, right? And you use all the tricks and tools in your tool bag to highlight amazing moments and create these magical phrases and things. And it's maybe not the thing that's deep down, but you're a stage actor in some ways, in that way, right? I am not a wizard.
And I want you to be Gandalf the wizard. And I said to him, you are aware that I am not really a wizard.
I think we'll keep quoting that.
Yeah,
every...
until somebody watches it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter Jackson comes.
Yeah. So I guess, taste is different from the question of what makes something a good or bad piece of music to you.
I think so.
But it sort of informs your taste. So what's front of mind these days? It's not a permanent answer because your tastes change, right?
Totally.
As when I was younger, I loved really sour candies, and I don't anymore.
Same thing, right?
So I think your musical taste changes with age as well.
Yeah.
But what's front of mind right now in terms of what's good, what's bad, what's yeah, what have you been thinking about?
Well, I think there's two sides.
Mm-hmm.
There's the cerebral side, and then there's the intuitive side.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some music that you just listen to, and I think we call them like guilty pleasures usually.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's some music you listen to and you think, well, I just really, really like this, but I can't tell you why. Like there's nothing in here that I could explain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know what, maybe there's like a Cardi B tune or something,
Mm-hmm.
that you think this doesn't really have any musical nutrition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's the cannoli.
Mm.
It just tastes good.
Yeah, it tastes
But
good.
yeah, so anyway, there's I think there's some side of it that's, when you're doing jury selection as like a lawyer and you get those free passes to just like cancel a juror.
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's some of those. Like, okay, I love this song. It really has an awesome beat or feel, or I like what it's about or something, and that's my free pass. But then there's the other side, which is a little bit more cerebral, which is you can explain why something hits. And I don't know, I can't explain everything, but sometimes it's a formal structure, sometimes it's whatever. But I rarely connect with a piece that doesn't have some very deep structure to it. So I can't tell you what's good and bad, but I think that there's for some people it's a little bit more like explaining. Like, I love the way that this motive gets developed in this classical music piece, or I love the way these lyrics complement the text, or whatever. And I feel like I would be hesitant if somebody is out there trying to judge music and doing it exclusively intuitively.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that you feel like, because you analyze pieces really well, and that influences how you play them. Does it influence how you feel about them?
I think so. I think there's sort of two stages. One is that, I mean, for me, is that I get really inspired by something in a piece of music.
Yeah.
Some moment.
Yeah.
And then you get to know the piece by trying to explain, why did I like that?
Yeah.
Then you get to know all the little parts of the piece, and maybe there's a contextual element, or there's something there. So I do think it starts with a spark.
Yeah.
Very rarely have I gone the other way.
Like eased into
it. Although it happens, especially with pieces that are a little more marbled and harder to get into. You sort of develop an appreciation for it. But no, I would say there's a strong intuitive sense.
Yeah.
But the intuition is sort of defined by your own experiences and your own biases. And so you might be predisposed in a certain culture or a certain place predisposed to like really enjoy something.
Yeah.
Like we were just listening to some Schumann and Brahms, and I could imagine in a time and an era where you heard music that was of a similar style, and then you heard Brahms's, you'd probably go, oh, that was really different than this, or this person has iterated a little bit more or something. So I think there's an intuitive element, but I was thinking that I think with percussion, we have sort of a responsibility to tend the yard of our repertoire, perhaps more than other instrumentalists do. We need to, because we don't have as long of a history of our repertoire. So when we teach, I think it's important that we carefully select the music that we're using to teach.
Quality control.
It's tough. And what is nutritious?
Yep.
What is, sugary?
Yep.
What has high gluten? What has low gluten? So for me, I mean, I just can speak personally. For percussion, I like to think about music that is interpretable, idiomatic, and subversive. So interpretable means that this is my taste, I guess. Interpretable means that like a human performer would bring something to this piece that a MIDI would not. Like it, and there's many ways you could do it. Like we were just at a concert with a Schumann romance, and they played it in one way, and I could imagine it being done 30, 40 other different ways,
and
right?
all valid, yeah.
They can all work. So I think a piece of music where that can happen, that's my taste. It, other people's taste might be different, but I think for teaching and for performing, I like that because I love those magical moments.
Yeah.
Then idiomatic, not to say that a piece is easy, but that a piece takes into account the unique characteristics of an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So that the marimba piece doesn't sound like a crappy piano, but it takes into account things that the marimba can do that maybe, a violin can't do.
Sure.
Or it includes, the sonically or organologically, like something that the characteristic of the sound. I think that is very inspiring when you're a percussionist.
Yeah.
To think, oh, this piece was written for my instrument. Although playing adaptations is really great.
Yep.
I think the adaptations should also be idiomatic.
Yeah.
And then subversive, I don't know. I like music, and I think it's great to teach with music that sort of changes what you think an instrument or a piece of music can do. Like, oh, I never knew that could be that warm.
Yeah.
Or I never knew, that it could be that cutting. Or I never knew you could play so melodically on this. Or I never knew that could be smooth. Yeah. So I think those three things are kind of the central core of my taste.
Yeah.
And I guess thing 4 is that I like things that connect to the past in some way. I like to play music where liking other music is a plus.
Yeah.
Not the kind of music where that is based on a total break from the past. I don't know. That's the core of my
I love that.
My taste.
Yeah.
And I think as a teacher or as a performer, it really cycles into how you curate things, because once you have those ideas, you're sort of like, well, I guess this is what I want to curate. This is what I want to commission. And maybe these are the pieces I want to teach, because oftentimes with percussion, we have a lot of pieces that are really shiny.
Yeah.
They have a great surface texture, but then a little bit of flaking later, they're gone.
Yeah.
And it may be awesome to play, but we're slow learners compared to people who play piano. Yeah. So I want to pick pieces for my students that if you spend 3 months, 2 months on this piece, you're going to get back more than you gave.
You can exhume more.
Yeah. I don't know. Does that sort of read or resonate at all?
Yeah. I might highlight for anybody who's out there still with us, I might highlight that you have these pillars by which you evaluate, I guess, or kind of filter music through. And I think it's awesome. Everybody should have maybe different ones, but it's okay to kind of gather one from a teacher, or take one. You could take one of Mike's pillars. Yeah. Trademark.
Because there are other pillars that are just not me.
Yeah.
Like this is a vehicle for virtuosity.
Yeah.
Or this is a vehicle for intense personal expression. I think those are things that I can't do as a musician, but I love it when you see someone choose a piece and you're like, I wonder what they're going to do with that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Or maybe something that's 100% brand new.
Yep.
Or, like focused in a different way. So I think there's definitely a lot of other.
I love that.
A lot of columns.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, some of the things that are really important when I'm trying to kind of decide whether a piece is worth my valuable time, because you're in some ways, like when you're in school, the teacher's going to pick something for you for your jury or something. And then your job is to learn it the way that it would be for a gig. Like you may or may not like this piece, but you have to find a way to love this piece, right? It's an arranged marriage in some way. And you can find through your exposures, like some really amazing things to highlight. But for me, as I'm choosing my own solo repertoire for a recital, let's say, then I'm trying to go for things that are interesting to me, that I haven't seen before, or that work in unique ways, or I feel like I can highlight in a new way that maybe another performer wouldn't have the background that I do, let's say. So things that are like if you made a list of musical attributes, right? There's melody and harmony and meter and and subdivision and texture,
Contour.
contour.
That's your favorite one.
Yeah,
Register.
register.
Mike
So
only plays high things.
it's kind of weird,
Yeah.
right? What does that do?
Yeah. El piccolo woodblock. Solo elbow.
Yeah, it's not just regular woodblock.
No.
Bass.
Yeah.
But but for me, I'm looking for a piece that highlights a lot of these things as interesting.
Oh,
right,
okay.
motivically interesting, melodically interesting, texturally interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, a good piece is something that has compositional craft at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
And compositional craft are the things that we study in these music theory classes, right? Where you can see a motive get transformed in these super creative ways that may or may not be apparent, and you can find the way that a motivic idea is manipulated throughout, augmentation and diminution and inversion and retrograde, and maybe not all of these things at once, but it's crafted in a way that makes this dramatic structure, and then the harmony is changing in really interesting ways. The texture is changing in interesting ways, and I feel like somebody could look at like a presto of Bach and say, well, that's a really lame texture. But if you really dive down, it's really not a lame texture, because those running 16th notes are just the result of multiple voices happening simultaneously. So, something isn't always what it seems on the surface. That's what I think is really good music, and that's music that I would want to play. I would want to spend my time diving in and interpreting. But the music that I don't want to play is the music that has like really constant texture for no reason, or harmonic shapes that don't work. Right? There are harmonic shapes that are cookie cutter and used like frequently, right? Like I don't want to play a lot of pieces that with just like the running bugada kind of texture where it's all fifths. And you were talking about idiomatic music, and I know that's not what you meant, but I want to clarify.
It is very idiomatic. Yeah.
Like when you have these pieces that just kind of go, and they're just permutations upon permutations, and all it's doing is just extending a single harmony, and that harmony is something that you could explain with a Roman numeral like 1 4 5 1 whatever. That's not a music that I want to spend my time with. And I'm not going to say anything's good or bad necessarily, but I want music that's thoughtful and well crafted, and deserves my valuable time, right? So maybe that's my stump speech. Is maybe you might have a piece that hits you intuitively, and you think, oh, I really want to play this. Well, okay, then maybe play it for a few minutes to make yourself feel good, like have that little bonbon. But when I'm really in the practice room and it's time for me to make myself a better person in the practice room, I want to do it with something that really has heart to it, and thought and craft, and the composers really thought about me and thought about themselves, and wanted to represent everybody the best.
Yeah. No.
Is that bad?
I think we're kind of have an agree cast.
Oh, well, yeah, but I agree with like everything that you've recorded, right? And I'm thinking to the stuff that you've done with Hannah, the new Morse code pieces, the ones that have been commissioned for you, like you, and then through like Safa and Impressions and the new stuff that you were talking about last time,
okay, yeah.
right? Like these are pieces that are all in a taste that I think I could really get behind, right? I could say I could go through Safa, and it would take years, but I could go through Safa and explain how he figured out this musical structure that's so powerful when you get through it, and it's interpretable, and it's like all the things that you're saying, but then it really hits all of mine.
What would you say? I think we both developed our sense of taste. We have obviously different backgrounds and different proclivities, but I think our schooling pointed towards a certain, maybe not, maybe our extracurricular lives. Like, how would you recommend somebody, like, what's the workout routine for like classical music taste? Like, is it listening to stuff? Is it going to concerts? Is it spending time alone? Obviously, there's no one taste, and the kind of music that I like is not objectively the greatest music. In fact, it's probably not.
Sure.
But what's the exercise routine for just developing your own taste?
I think it's listening to something with another person who loves it.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
I think that's the easiest and quickest way to get into realizing why you love something. And you may not realize why it's great until you listen with somebody else. And I had an experience recently where I listened to the Wagner Ring Cycle. I listened to Rheingold and Valkyrie's played live, and this is too much. It's and I think it's one of those, are arguably one of the really great feats of like Western music thought. Just the ability to conceive of something so big and realize it on such an amazing scale. And I have a lot of respect for it. But I was around people who knew everything about that. They knew the themes, they knew the motives, they could sing things, they could talk about the plot, they could talk about the way that these characters interact later in the other subsequent operas. And gosh, I mean, being around that kind of infectious passion and knowledge, it made me want to go and learn more about it myself. And it's not to say I didn't love it already, but when you're sitting there listening to something with your teacher, let's say, and you had talked about that.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we would listen to music together, and that was really formative experiences to me. But I totally agree with you. There's nothing more interesting than somebody who's interested in something.
Yeah.
Like that topic becomes extremely interesting to you. So I totally agree.
You're one of the best at this.
I love being interested.
Yeah.
I will show up at anything where somebody's excited about it.
Like music, non-music, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like if that person is interested in, like vintage stoves, I'm in. That sounds great.
Right. Well, I recently got you that book.
Yes.
That about the different
fake, fraud, or authentic. How to identify fakes in vintage American furniture.
Right.
It's fascinating. I'm learning so much about drawers and stuff.
Feet.
Seams and feet. Yeah. But I think also there's something implicit in what you said, which is give something a chance.
Yeah.
Like listen, attend, but try to listen from the point of view of somebody who's super into it.
Yeah.
So that, you might not like this, but maybe by being around somebody who's passionate about it, or just getting more of it, you might think, oh, actually, this is something that I want to be part of my taste profile, so to speak.
Well, something that was enlightening last summer, and not to be a super like dweeb here, but reading Charles Rosen's Classical Style, the Classical Style book, it could be a little bit drab for some people, but it made me realize, or it's not a forms, you could go down the Charles Rosen rabbit hole, but reading something like that that's so in depth about one thing, you start to realize like all the cool nuances of something, and how when you're inside of it, you're so sensitive to these different things, the way like a sommelier is so sensitive to these little notes of things. And that's a really intriguing, interesting thing that I haven't developed that taste. But I'm so sensitive. Like I think about that composer as specialist article.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's one of the best examples, right?
Yeah.
Where the thinking is, this Milton Babbitt article, right? Like the thinking is, you can't really judge this book by its cover, and you're not inside of this world to judge. And what he was doing was kind of addressing the concert audience around the middle part of the 20th century who would go to a concert of new music and would judge a piece immediately, whether they were a reviewer or just a public audience member. They would hear a piece, and maybe the sound world wasn't something that they think that they liked, and so they would just write the whole piece off as bad and call it a day. And then eventually it became like, I don't like not only this piece, I don't like new music. And then that was it. right? Then they made their decision and they were closed off to everything else, and they probably missed out on some amazing opportunities. But his point with the article, as I remember it, was something like, you wouldn't go to a NASA conference and not understand the formula that are being you talked about, or you don't understand rocket science, and then just write off the entire field of rocket science as useless. You would go and say, wow, I really don't understand that. Maybe that's not for me because I don't understand it. And then as you learn more, if you wanted to, then you could go back and get more out of it. And I think it's the same thing with a lot of contemporary music that's maybe in the Darmstadt complexity realm. Sometimes we just don't understand it, and that's okay. And you can choose whether to learn more and really invest and try to get something out of it. And you can do that in a number of ways, whether it's like just listening with another person or whatever. But I will say that if I had one piece of advice, it would be to go, if you are somebody who maybe doesn't play a lot or doesn't understand tonal music or atonal music, like atonal music of some kind, or maybe contemporary music generally, you have a tough time like understanding that and getting around it. It's okay to go to somebody who does it. Like, we do it and we love it. Or maybe it's your teacher at home, or maybe it's somebody else, or maybe you can like write to Mike on the Instacart or whatever.
Oh
you
yeah,
do.
find me. Instacart. I'll deliver you
an explanation.
Floret of new music. Yeah.
But yeah, just go to them and you can be vulnerable, and you can say, hey, what's good about this? Right. I mean, I think I would love to answer that question and say, all right, well, hey, let's listen through Lachenmann Interieur.
Yeah.
Why is this good?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you like about this? Yeah.
And I think you could probably go for hours about why that piece is so profound.
Maybe too long. Yeah. But no, I agree. Case closed. No, it's yeah, I agree. And just what you said about discovering that every little zone is a pretty big pool in music is kind of nice. I remember being at a talk once where the composer Alejandro Viñao was giving a talk, and he said one big challenge in contemporary music after World War II is that it takes as long as the piece lasts to figure out how to listen to the piece, because there's such a multiplicity of styles. There's such a huge expansion on our concert stages in the U.S. of types of things that could happen. Yeah, that we're not in a mono style like the Charles Rosen thing, where you're expecting a sonata. So it takes a long time to figure out, well, is this piece? Oh, I guess the woodblock is what I'm listening to, or I guess it's microtonal. So it takes so long in the piece to get to know that there's not really a binary of I'm all in or I'm all out. Yep. So it's possible to like this piece, this type of thing, but not this type of thing. Yeah. It's possible to like this, but not this. And that's okay as long as you have backup. So for students, they are paying me to work with them. Yep. So to some extent, I need to articulate, okay, let's interrogate your taste. Sure. Here, let's interrogate what you like, why you like it. What's the backup in the music or the culture that makes this important or makes this interesting or makes this important to you or signifying to you. But otherwise, I mean, there's just such a variety of worlds now that I think
I love that.
It's hyper personalized, except that we need to teach it. I do think we teach it, whether we say we do or not. Yeah. Like that Charles Barkley quote, "I'm not a role model." Like you are, whether you want to be or not. Yep. And as a teacher, you are setting the curriculum, whether you think you are or not.
Yeah, passively or actively.
Yeah, think about like an English class. What is the book you're using in the class? That's Maniac a pretty McGee. Big. Yeah. Encyclopedia Brown. Yeah. Twisted Stories of Wayward High. That's what we're doing. Yeah. No, so no matter what, you are setting the curriculum. Yep. Even if the student chooses the pieces, you are still setting the curriculum.
Sure. But I mean, to take a little pressure off us, I think there's an element of students taking responsibility for developing their own taste, especially in undergrad, that is so critical. Because number one, it's like kind of a formative time for your brain.
Yes.
So it has to happen kind of between that 16 and 25 range. But there's only so much that we can actually get our hands around. As far as pieces go, there's only so much that you can do in the course of 15 weeks, right? Especially when you're dealing with all the other classes and ensembles and all the other chamber music stuff or whatever you're doing in school. But the student can also take control over developing their taste. And I think what we've kind of said in a few ways is the only way to really understand taste is to have this wealth of musical experience behind you through listening and playing and all these other things. But it's to like be around the music. So if I were to give a suggestion for anybody out there listening, especially we're going to be releasing this in the summer, and there's maybe a little bit more time for students if they're out there. But take the initiative to listen to at least one album every week, like in its entirety without interruption. Put the headphones on, sit there and read the liner notes. Like if you can, even like go to the library, put the CD in the thing, and sit there and read the liner notes and be exposed to the music and pick stuff that you wouldn't have known before. Like pick a CD off the shelf that doesn't have a composer that you've heard of or a style that you know or something, and then read about it. Because when we go to teach something, we don't always know what the piece is, and we've never played it, but we have a pretty good idea of a style that we know that's a lot like it. Another piece, right? Like for me, like to use Lachenmann as an example, like Lachenmann, I know fairly well. You know better because you played into your ear, but I know Lachenmann pretty well, and I feel like I can see his music in other composers. Like I just coached a Alex Lunsky sextet, and I feel like there's a lot of Lachenmann in his sound world, and but that's just because we have this wealth of listening experience. The only way you can do that is just to sit there and be focused and have listening time, read about the background, and maybe as you're listening, and have that dedicated time. And then those styles will accumulate, and then your musical taste will start to develop. I didn't realize I loved this, or I can see where this flamenco guitar album is coming from the Middle Eastern music that I was listening to.
Yeah. I would also add that even if you want to go down and only do one thing, if that's the road you want to be going down,
sure,
nothing helps you set your path more than deciding what's not on your path.
Sure.
Like, I don't really want to do that. Like, I want to do that. And that's something that's great from living somewhere and going to events.
Yep.
Going to concerts, being around other people, and sort of triangulating yourself in reference to other people.
Yeah.
But you can only do it if you have high exposure. And I think taste is developed through exposure. And so is musical mastery, I think.
Yeah.
Very few people are incredible musical masters and have only played the works of one Western classical composer. It probably, I think.
I think it would be difficult for that person to get to where they are if they were at the top of their field without, even in their private time, playing other music, like sight reading
something else. Yeah. So I think that I totally agree. Our taste is forged by that, and to sort of be humble with it.
Yeah.
To say like, don't let the answer be I don't like something just cause, but sort of, I don't like something because of this.
Yeah.
Or like I'm not into. We were talking about that today because we went to an event that was Schumann and Brahms.
Schumanns,
and Brahms, and we were sort of thinking, man, we kind of like the Brahms pieces better than the Robert Schumann.
Why
pieces.
is it?
And I think that's just our own unique taste. But getting to the point where you can say, it's because of this, that I think is when your taste is really refined to the point where it's ready for prime time. I mean, that's not the same standard that other people use. Yeah. People will say they'll say like, oh, you don't like it, that's fine. But I think, for us that have the luxury of teaching and also curating,
Yep.
That's something I think is a requirement to be able to say, this is why I chose this.
Yeah.
Not just because this piece exists for my instrument.
Yeah.
Not just because it's the only piece I know.
Sure.
But because it's this. So I think that's something that's important to me.
Yeah, I have a hard time with the people who say, I don't like it because it doesn't sound good, or I don't like it because it makes these weird sounds on the instrument, and I only like tonal music or something. And I guess it's okay in some ways. Like, we're kind of conditioned now to say, well, whatever you think is fine, but I don't think it is fine. Like, I think it's okay. I think what I would prefer the dialogue to be, or the verbiage to be, was not I don't like this piece, but more like, this is a really good piece in this style, or I feel like I wish this piece did something different in this style, instead of like good, that kind of thing. So I hesitate to say like and dislike as much as like put it in its own context. Like you were talking
I would
about.
also even go more granular.
Yeah, what's that?
To say like, don't say I like or I don't like this piece. You could say I like this moment, I like this part.
Yeah.
What they did here was really great, but I'm just not a Police Academy fan. I like that one scene where the guy's talking really fast,
so funny.
but I'm just not a Police Academy fan. And so I think that's my thought about taste, is that people say there's no accounting for it. People say the customer is always right in matters of taste,
Sure.
but I think it's incumbent on you, if you're a student of music or the arts, to develop it.
Sure.
And so if it's on you to develop it, even if your taste is wide ranging,
Eat the broccoli.
yeah, you can't just say you don't like broccoli.
Yeah, try to prepare it in a different way.
Yeah. So we covered taste.
Yeah.
What sense is next?
All right.
Touch. What's the best feeling percussion instrument? Sandpaper blocks? Vibroslap?
Yeah,
What's
I think
the most
we're getting
interesting
into
feeling?
ASMR, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something about a calf head that's really nice.
Feels good.
Like a nice calf timpani head that has just a little bit of texture to it. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't associate percussion instruments with feeling particularly good.
Yeah.
Generally, many of them are dangerous. There's risk of shards.
Yeah.
Or like jungle fever in some way, or metal or something like that. Maybe we should skip to smell.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've gotten tetanus from a triangle beaver. But I mean, just to kind of wrap up with the thought that I had when you were talking, I think something that might be really cool for a person who's going on an exploration at some point of like listening through pieces they may not know, or listening through albums they may not have experienced, is if you're listening to something and you don't like it, listen to it again right away. Just listen to the album again and say, okay, let me see if I'm expecting something, will it be better for me? Like, will I appreciate it more? Or, I never caught that. Or, now I understand this one moment a little bit better.
I like that. My tag on 1+ is listen again, but then be able to say why you didn't like it.
And what your favorite moment was.
Yeah.
What's the favorite moment?
And don't say when it ended. I've had students say that.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, there's some music that I'm kind of out of favor with, simply because of how it looks on the page.
Tell me about it.
Because
it's a topic for another podcast.
But there's some things about I don't want to engage with that music because I just physically can't make sense of it on the page. Like, if you've got a string of 16th notes, let's say, and the rhythm is just even 16th notes, but there's different stems that are going up, or like there's notes that are separated in the bar but there's no rest, or something, like a music's engraving sometimes will make me not want to approach it. And then on the other side, like, sometimes that is this huge barrier, and then once you get in, you realize that, wow, I'm thinking of two things. One, for percussionists, 6th cello suite with all the C clefs. And you had a funny thing when I told you last summer that I was working on the cello suites.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just like you kind of like slam on the brakes.
Yeah, as soon as you get there, it's like you're playing the steel drum.
Oh no!
All of a sudden, yeah.
So the 6 cello suite, I was thinking about Safa.
Oh yeah, it takes
where
so long.
You look at it and you think this is too much work, but once you get inside of it, you realize how valuable it is.
Yeah, but it is too much work. I wish he had done it another way.
It's impossible. Like it had to be that way with the way he structured the piece, but gosh, it would be nice if it were written a different way.
Tell me about
it. Would look it would look different, or it would feel different to the performer.
Yeah, yeah.
But
well,
yeah.
we did it. I think we did it.
Taste. Yeah. So I mean, is there anything we need to leave everybody with? Like, what's the call to action here?
I think the call to action is to be humble.
Yeah.
To accept that you are a work in progress.
Yeah.
That your taste will change, and to think when you're learning, and we're all learning, to think nutritionally as well as pleasurably.
Yeah.
You know, Mike T is so great at continuing to become better at music. You know, his summer practice thing, if you watch his YouTube video, it looks like every day he's basically Hildegard von Bingen, you know, sight reading, making his own barley, sight singing, doing all this kind of stuff. But, you know, I think if you're in the music business, that's what you need to be doing. You need to be getting better at music, which means that, so for some people that's digging more inward, like I'm going to only be doing this for a while. But you also need to develop a sense of what's out there. How are you engaging with that? Why?
Yeah.
Especially if you need to, as is so common today, if you have to be able to like tell your own professional story digitally or however. So that's my call to action. Be humble.
Yeah.
Listen. Go to stuff. And practice being specific. You know, practice. You know, talk to people about things you like. You know, we've been having fun going to concerts together and going like, that page turn was really crazy. Yeah. Because we just went to a concert where there was a really amazingly intense page turn. Yeah, yeah. And, or like that one, the way that person played the beginning of that piece was like, so I think the specificity is what makes it fun and also learning and also interesting.
Yeah. Look for the specifics, look for the details. Even if there's one moment in a concert that you can grab onto, it's a successful trip to the concert.
Definitely.
And then maybe I would just add on that when you're digesting music, digest slowly. So the idea of like, there's a place for having the headphones in and like doing something else and just like passively listening to music, but there's also the like sitting at a concert, not looking at the phone, reading the liner notes and sitting there like really invested in that experience. Digest it slowly too, because you know, that's as far as like physical health, if that helps too, right?
I think it does. Being slow, paying attention.
Yeah.
Wow. So we talked about a lot more than taste. This is great.
So what are the other ones? Time. What are the other dimensions? Taste. Oh no, that's a dimension.
Time, space.
Space. Okay. There's length,
width, volume. Next time we'll sort all percussion instruments by voluminous.
Yeah. How many cc's is this sonata?
Yeah. It's got 10 femtomoles of notes. Great. Well, thank you for allowing me in your dojo here. This is really cool.
Yeah. Well, the least combative duo.
Another AgreeCast in the books.
Complete.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. See you later.
Bye-bye.